No finance meeting to order. Unless there's any changes, additions, or deletions, I need a motion and support to approve the agenda, please.
So moved.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Passes unanimously. Thank you much. Item 3, public comment. Do we have any public comment today? See no public comment. We'll move to item 4. First up, 4A is the minutes from March 9th, 2015. Unless there's any corrections or deletions, discussion, I need a motion and support to approve the minutes.
Support.
And support.
Carl's got the motion.
Those opposed, the same. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Item 4B, our retirement drop list for our review. We have a couple JDOT employees. Any discussion or questions? Thank you, board. Move to item C, information technology update to the policy 6030 on emails. Welcome.
Morning. This is a update to the email policy. It reflects the changes that will be taking place in order to provide electronic email check stub distribution and provide some minor technical adjustments to provide more of a best-of-breed policy for the way in which we handle and store email, and has a minor technical change in the examples of inappropriate use. In the draft, the additions are shown in bold and underlined, which are the addition of sections G, H, and I, and the strikeout is in section F, section 3.
So moved.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
I believe all of you were present at the study session last week when Mark Notley from Municipal Consulting Services came and gave his presentation on the proposed procedure that he would go through to conduct the classification and compensation study, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Joni, I asked Mike this question. I hope he doesn't mind my asking you, but I was around shortly after they did the Rye study, and I see that Mr. Rye is part of this group now. If I understand it right, I think Mark bought the company from him, and he still employs him. And if I have that part right, if not, correct me.
Yeah, Bill is basically retired, but he does assist Mark as needed. Mark and they did work together for a while. I think they kind of merged together, but I'm not sure how long Bill's been retired. I think it's probably been at least a couple of years, and so he just assists kind of as needed. But Mark essentially would be doing the bulk of the study.
Okay, because my concern was it seems like through the years we would hear regular conversations about the Rye study. You've been around long enough. You were here when they did the last one, I think, but you don't have any concerns with that issue, I assume?
I don't, and even though it's still a point factoring system, at one point Mike and Adam and I had met with Mark along with doing a phone interview of the other company that had submitted a proposal, but he's modified the point factors that, you know, the study back in '97 were used, and so I think it's been updated as needed based on technology changes and that type of thing.
some of the concerns, Dave, that we heard over the years, I think, about the RISE study, so that the public is aware, was that I believe the commissioners commissioned it, but then did not fully implement it.
Well, it took us 3 years.
Right.
Because of the scope of it back then. They really, and I was hired when it was starting into the process. We were at the point where employees were doing the job analysis questionnaires, but we did have a 3-year plan to implement for the employees that were affected. And then we still had to negotiate it for those unions as their contracts had come up at that time.
Coming in '01, I just remember hearing a lot of conversations about it. It was done before I came on the board, but I do remember hearing conversations, so thank you.
Administrator Overton, please.
And to be clear, we may very well need to spend a couple years, 2 or 3 years, implementing the new study as well. Depends on, the cost and those sort of things. And of course, union contracts had just begun. They still have another 2.5 years to go on those.
Sure.
It'd be, if it's completed by this time next year, which I would expect it would be, it may very well be that we would be looking to do something more immediate with the non-union, but then the union contracts, we would incorporate that into negotiations our next time around.
Thank you, Mike. Any further questions? Need a motion and support to send this to the full board?
So moved.
Support.
You have a motion and support. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Next up, another HR letter. We have a letter of understanding we need to provide to the Police Officers Association.
Yes, as you'll recall, the new contract that we have with POAM was through the process of an arbitration proceeding, and before the actual arbitration hearing was convened, both sides were able to come to an agreement, so we had a stipulated arbitration decision. So as that was kind of thrown all together that day, it came to our attention after the fact that there was some language that both sides had agreed on before we had before arbitration had been filed, and so both sides would still like to get this particular language into the contract, and since the contract had already been approved, we need to do it through a letter of understanding, and because this was a stipulated arbitration decision, our attorney had advised that the board would need to approve it, where typically it would just be the chair and the vice chair of Personnel and Finance would normally sign off on a letter of understanding. So this letter really is just putting into writing what has been the practice, one having to do with if the sheriff orders off a deputy on a scheduled holiday, how many hours they're going to be paid for that holiday, and it really just coincides with whether they're on a 12 shift or an 8-hour shift. And the other is putting language to the fact that they're allowed to use what we term as a floating holiday. And so, as you see in that letter of understanding, there's 2 sections there with language that's bolded, and that would be added into that particular section of the contract.
So, Joni, this just gives them, as an example, if an employee if it's a past day and it falls on a holiday, if they're on an 8-hour shift, they get 8 hours of straight time anyway, correct?
Yes.
Or 12 hours. And this just codifies it that if they're ordered off, they get the same thing.
Yes.
Okay. I'd move the request.
Support. Aye.
Thank you.
Yes. Welcome, Rick.
Morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. We have before you a request to purchase a new vehicle for the intensified supervised probation for District Court.
Support. Aye.
And then, next up, we have a request to purchase a new facilities work truck to replace one that didn't make it through the winter. Yes.
Yeah. Support. Aye.
Thank you. Next up, we have a request to purchase 2 new Meals on Wheels vehicles.
Move to approve. Aye.
Thank you. Mechanical equipment for the clerk's remodeling project, using the low bid of Arctic Service of Jackson, Michigan.
Support. Aye.
Yes. Thank you.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, committee members. First item of business here is the presentation of the monthly financial statements for the month of February. And while our benchmark is 16.7%, 2 months of the year, actual expenditures are at 19.3. 2 factors we need to consider here. One is that the February financials reflect the quarterly transfers, and also we are still, we have 5 payrolls instead of 4, so that would put our benchmark, if we just look at salaries, at 19.2%. The results, looking at the graphs, in terms of expenditures, we are just a tad above historical trends. On the revenue side, just a little bit below historical trends. Last month we were above. So again, on the revenue, comments I would have is it's always subject to when we receive the monies, because we're on a cash basis when we present the monthly financials. So, any questions? Yes, we're asking for approval and forwarding to the full board Resolution 05-15.15, and this is related to the capital improvement bonds. We had to start over, in effect. We had to republish a notice in the newspaper to start the process for the issuance of the bonds. So this modified our time frame somewhat, basically a month behind what we anticipated. Otherwise, there's no change. This is for the $2.6 million bond issue related to the energy savings with Honeywell.
We have a motion and support. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? None. Passes unanimously. Thank you, Jim. Item 4L is another finance item.
Yes, we have some budget amendments that we're presenting to this committee, and I combined two factors here. Each year we do what we call the float adjustment in accordance with Board Policy 1040. And what that is we reduce salary and fringes for large departments to account for vacancies within those departments. The remaining part of the adjustments are based on projections, changes in various departments based on factors we know now versus what we knew back when we adopted the budget. And in addition to that, there are adjustments for union increases of 1% and county non-union of 1%. So that's all kind of lumped together into one big budget amendment. But basically, the float adjustment is a reduction of $249,080, which is along the lines of what it has been historically. It it tends to increase each year as salary levels increase. Basically, this float adjustment is being used to cover the wage increases. It's being used to cover the $95,000 appropriation for Cascades Phase 2, and it's also being used to cover the general fund portion of the compensation study that you approved previously.
Questions, discussion? Need a motion to send us to the full board?
Support.
Motion and support. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Nice report. Moving on to item 5A. Need a motion to pay the claims.
Support.
Motion and support. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Passes unanimously. We have other minutes. My computer is terribly slow. Anybody have questions on the other minutes? May reporting schedule. I believe it's JTA and Finance. Moving on to item 6, public comment. Any public comment? Appears to be none. Committee member comments. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.